Very good. We're still shy of starting now, aren't we? Okay, it is 2 o'clock according to my computer. Afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the meeting of the the Housing Supervisory Board. Nice to see you all here. Thank you. Just a little bit of housekeeping. We're not expecting a fire drill today. In the event of the alarm sounding, please leave the building and gather in front of the building. I'm obliged to inform you that this meeting is being live streamed and recorded. Can I also ask that you switch off your mobile phones and probably computers as well, but I know that doesn't necessarily always work from full council meetings. My name's Vince Hunt. I am the chair of this committee, and I will go around starting with Councillor Tony Parsons and ask that members introduce themselves. Then when we get back, we'll start with you, Ros, and we'll go around the officers as well. So, Tony.
Tony Parsons, councillor for Basin Hill, Colne and Sutton.
Jeff Anderson, councillor for Harlescott.
Ruth Houghton, councillor for Bishop's Castle.
Bernie Winter, councillor for Meal.
Julian Dean, councillor for Port Hill.
Dan Thomas, councillor for Muchmarlock.
Simon Jones, councillor for Shrewsbury Division.
Gary Burton, councillor for Blackwood Division.
Ros Bridges, finance director and company secretary at Cornovi Developments Limited.
Aubrey Wright, managing director for Cornovi Developments Limited.
Lucy Heath, client and commissioning manager in place of James Huey, assistant director of Homes and Communities.
Shelley Davies, committee officer.
Good. Thank you very much. Just as a reminder, because we are live streaming, if you would just remember to say your name before you speak. I would probably say it anyway, but just in case I forget, make sure you do. Thank you very much. So we will move on to the agenda, and the first item is apologies for absence. And I have one from Councillor Heather Kidd, and Councillor Bernie Bentic is substituting for her. Are there any others? I don't think there are there? So, disclosable pecuniary interest. Does anybody have a disclosable pecuniary interest? No. Item 3 will be the minutes then, to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on 8th of June 2023. I will get you, Gary, because you chaired the last meeting, right, because I was involved in the car accident on the way here, to sign those minutes. But for those that were here, can somebody please propose that they're happy with them? And
I'll propose that they're a true and correct record.
I'll second that.
Good. Good. Okay. Excellent. Thank you very much. Item 4 is public question time. There have been no public questions received. Item 5 is member question time, and there have been no member questions received. So we'll move on to item 6, which is the Cornovi Developments Limited update report, presented by the client and commissioning manager, Lucy Heath. Lucy.
Thank you. So the purpose of this report is to update the Housing Supervisory Board on the progress of Cornovi Developments Limited against its approved 10-year business plan, which was approved by the Housing Supervisory Board in March of this year. The full report from Cornovi is shown in Appendix X and provides detail of the company's activities until the end of June 2023 for the first quarter. Furthermore, this report seeks approval from the Housing Supervisory Board for the appointment of a new director to the CDL board. The report in Appendix A provides the Housing Supervisory Board with an update on the CDL activities since the last monitoring board, and represents an update against the approved schemes: Ifton Heath, Ellesmere Wharf, Oaklands and London Road. The climate change appraisal within the report features all the climate measures for the approved schemes which have previously been presented to the Housing Supervisory Board. Again, those 4 approved schemes. This information is presented to the Housing Supervisory Board in accordance with the shareholder agreement, which sets out that quarterly monitoring reports will be provided by the company to the Housing Supervisory Board to keep the Housing Supervisory Board updated with the activities of the company. Furthermore, the shareholder agreement sets out that the Housing Supervisory Board will approve any appointments to the CDL board, hence the recommendation to the Housing Supervisory Board to approve the appointment of Ian Cherms. So the Housing Supervisory Board is asked to receive the update report from CDL and to approve the appointment of Ian Cherms to the CDL board. I'll pass over to Harpreet, who will give the detail of that quarterly monitoring report.
Thank you. Harpreet.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of the main items for updating, if I can first of all start off in terms of activity on site. We currently have 4 schemes on site at Ifton Green, Ellesmere Wharf, London Road and Oaklands. Ifton Green and Ellesmere Wharf had delays on site due to services. The original target date for completion of the first units were approximately September, and we're now looking at a November date. But what we have been able to do at Ifton Heath now is to actually release the properties on for sale because the services issue there have been resolved. At Ellesmere it's a bit more complicated because there's some outstanding service issues and some concerns around health and safety if somebody buys a property there, because it's got a single entrance in and out the site. And the way in which these schemes being developed currently is that some of the plots would potentially be affected by heavy machinery, making it potentially unsafe for people to move into those properties. So it's something we're taking advice from LABC and also external health and safety advisors. In terms of the Oakland site, the demolition has now been completed. We had our start on site kind of PR event recently, and we're now looking and aiming to have our first property being handed over between February and April next year. That's progressing relatively well. Again, services is a concern, but we have put in new service requests. I think it's important to identify that different developments have different service providers depending on where you are within the county. Many are aware that we've got Scottish Power and Welsh Water in the north of the county. We've got Severn Trent and Western Power in the middle of the county, and also parts of the south of the county, and they have different processes and procedures in place, and also have different laws governing what they can and can't do, and that has an impact in terms of the kind of development programs as well. And in terms of London Road, you'll probably see as you're driving up that we've made a lot of progress on that site. So we've actually removed all the vegetation on the site currently. We've created a site entrance, and we're in the process now of undertaking quite a lot of diversion work there and remediating the site. So we're expecting to see some real progress in terms of foundations going in probably at the turn of the year. But that site again is progressing relatively well at this point. Again, because of service diversions, there may be a small delay, but that might be anything between 5 and 10 weeks. Happy to take questions in relation to sites.
Okay, Councillor Tony Parsons.
So I just wanted to say how good it was to see the progress at the Oakland site when we were there in mid-August, and that the developer there, I think it's Shingler Homes, had done a lot of clearance of that pretty tricky sort of site with different levels, and it was progressing very well, and looks as though, I think there was promising probably first completion by the end of this year, so that looks promising.
It's the sort of question you can field all day long.
Yes, I can. I'd be pleasantly surprised if they can complete before the end of the year based on the updated programme. But yeah, it was a great session. I think one of the things I'd just like to flag really is that site had been earmarked for residential development, I believe, for nearly 10 years, and we've tried to take that forward in a variety of ways through the work that Cornellby's been able to, and also the council, because we were able to secure external funding for the demolition and land remediation. It's been allowed us to unlock that site, so I think that kind of partnership approach is really appreciated on that site.
Thank you. Councillor Ruth Howard.
Thank you, Chair. Ruth Howson. You've kept us updated all the way through, Pete, around the problems and challenges around Ellesmere and Ifton. But what is the expected net date now on Ellesmere?
We are aiming for the first completions between November and January this year, and with the site being completed ideally by May or June next year. But that is very much related to the advice we're getting from our health and safety consultants. So while the properties would potentially be ready for us to achieve a certificate of mortgageability, we need to have safe access into those properties, and that's the thing we're currently focused on.
If I may, Chair, could this have been identified at the planning stage?
If I'm honest with you, yes, and it could have been identified as part of the initial development programme. The challenge we had with this site was when the previous developer went into liquidation, and what that resulted in was quite a complicated programme that we had to undertake, because we had to re-engineer some of the foundations that have been put in place to date, and also deal with quite a complex diversion on the site because of the severe gas works. So what we've had to do in terms of the programming of the works, because we wanted to build where we could build, is actually start at the entrance into the site and to the left-hand side, where ideally we would start at the rear and build out that way. So I think, unfortunately, the kind of circumstances with that site, we probably wouldn't have built it out in that way if we didn't have that complicated diversion to deal with, and also the kind of the historic issues with that site in terms of it. In terms of the contract and liquidation, but then also the level of contamination, which is one of the most contaminated sites we've ever dealt with at CDM or during my career.
Thank you.
And I have to say, if memory serves me, these issues were discovered when spades hit the soil as opposed to before then. It has been a bit of a nightmare, that site, but it's good to hear that we're getting there, and instead of getting one or two finished, there should be a little flurry of them, hopefully. Yes.
Can I ask Jeff Anderson what the contamination is? You referred to contamination.
Everything from asbestos. We found old piles in there from pylons, which have been buried there historically. There's also gas mains within the site, so there's areas that we can't take forward because we've had to dig out the kind of gas mains as part of that. There's electric diversion moving through part of the site as well. And there's also a water course within the site as well, which is quite complicated to manage as well, where it was blocked up going into the kind of Ellesmere Canal. So there's, in essence, probably about 80% of the things you read about has been identified on that site. Going back though, the council historically purchased that site. We were very lucky. We secured external funding for the remediation of that site. We did do a lot of surveys to understand the level of remediation that was required. But Vince is quite right. Until you start on site and you've gone through the entire site, you're not really able to tell what was there. So, for instance, we knew about the asbestos. We knew where the building had previously been demolished. We knew about the electric diversion. We knew about the gas mains, but what we didn't really fully understand until you start digging out the soil is that kind of level of contamination. What we didn't know about was the historic pylons that had been buried on site. That was something new as we started developing the site.
Councillor Julian Dean.
Thank you, Councillor Julian Dean. Yes, a couple more general questions, if I may. So we've got a drift now from the 19% affordable plan to 17%. And I suppose the big question is that a one-off, or is that a direction of travel? Are we going to see further drift away from 19%? So that's the sort of the general question. The other one is related a bit more detail. So in the tables on tenure type, there's a and this is really trying to dig into what we're going to have in terms of affordable housing. Table 2.7 says homes by tenure type and bedroom size. It tells me the bedroom size, but it doesn't tell me the tenure type. So what I'm trying to understand is, in terms of what we still are delivering as affordable homes, are they at the appropriate sizes based on assessed needs that we're trying to fill? I think I'll leave it there. Those two questions.
Thank you.
I think, first of all, I think in relation to the affordable, that's the minimum. And as a company, we were always looking at avenues which we've kind of discussed in the paper about how we can increase the level of affordable housing on across our sites, while also having to deal with the kind of commercial reality of the development. So from our perspective, it's something we can tap into in partnership with the local authority and other partners, which will increase the level of housing. We will do that. And what's been really interesting for me is Homes England are now looking at social rents again. So that again is a potential new avenue for us as well. So for me, it's the minimum, and we want to do more because I think it's really important across the county to deliver more affordable housing. I can come back to you about the specifics around whether it's 2, 3 or 4 bedroom properties we're building, but the majority of the properties are in line with the advice from our housing strategy colleagues, and the 2 and 3 bedroom properties and bungalows. That's where we're aiming our affordable at the moment.
Thank you.
Jeff Anderson. Can I ask, obviously we've got 2 things that are working against us, the housing market pretty well collapsing in some areas, and house prices falling, and then on the other side you've got the raw materials going up. Over the last 3 months, how has that changed? Has that improved or has it got worse?
Got worse. We've all seen what's happened with interest rates. We've seen what's happening within the market. We are not getting as many viewings as we had historically. It's probably been the worst time for house prices. Well, for the housing market, probably since 2016. In my view, it's very similar to that kind of time period. However, we've had a tough 12 months, and if you look at the forecast, it's looking at the new financial year. Maybe things might be improving, because what we're having at the moment across ourselves and others is there's a more cautious approach. A lot of people are not moving forward with sites, and there's actually a choking off of supply. So what that means is that potentially there'll be a lack of supply on the market, but the demand for housing is always there. The big question for me, and I think it's one for us to discuss with the board maybe at the next away day, is around tenure and type of housing we're building, because there is a big affordability gap, especially people in the lower quartile, especially within Shropshire, and it's how we then use that to use the company and what we're trying to achieve to help mitigate some of those issues. But yeah, there's a lot for us to kind of consider, and at the same time, a lot of developers, house builders, we've seen the news about Vistry now only going into affordable housing for an extended period. They're all looking at their models and thinking, actually, is this the right model now, given some of the challenges we're going through?
Julia, I won't say, I'll leave you to say the deep bit, because
Okay.
you obviously felt put out last time. So.
No, it wasn't. It was just, yeah, Julie. My question is actually to Lucy this time. It's so under 10 additional information. It says the performance of CDL is also monitored by the council's Homes and Communities Board team. So, do we get a formal report from that team? And is that where? Because I think we've talked about benchmarking and those sorts of issues before. Is that where we might see some comparisons with what is happening in other places in terms of delivery of affordable housing, especially? The other thing I should say before you answer actually is I should have said some positive things. So the really nice to see the social value aspects in detail, and the detail around energy performance. So that was very welcome.
Yeah, historically the CDL monitoring board hasn't reported to the Housing Supervisory Board. It's not set out in the terms of reference that it necessarily would do, but that is something we could review in terms of reference to the CDL monitoring board are reviewed annually. In terms of the structure of those meetings, we would look at any ongoing transactions between the company and the council. So those more operational things that might be going on. We do look at the monitoring board, the monitoring reports that come from CDL, and it's that information that's used to put together the cover reports that we present to yourselves at the Housing Supervisory Board, and they would the monitoring board, as I say, as well as overseeing the performance and looking at the performance, and then putting together the reports for you, would also look at any issues around delivery and whether or not that delivery that CDL is making is in line with the requirements of the strategic housing function. And yes, and so that's broadly the areas that we cover, and then any matter of governance back between the council and the company that may need addressing any legal matters, financial matters.
Thanks. So through the chair. So what you, if I've understood that correctly, so the first bit of the report, or the report from you, if you like, is based on your reflections of the report that's come from. Okay, that's great. I suppose it would just be I think be reassuring if that first report was a bit more, if you like, reflective of a bigger picture. How am I trying to put this? I'm not suggesting it should sort of hammer Cornovi every time, but that report, from what you said, needs to be sort of an independent view of what we're getting from Cornovi, whereas often it does, to be honest, read a little bit like a summary of what we're hearing from Cornovi. That's just my reflection on what I'm seeing. Thanks.
Yeah, and just coming back on that is something that the CDL monitoring board has identified for itself, and particularly around some of the financial information and giving more of a scrutinising it slightly more and giving a council view back to the Housing Supervisory Board on that information that's presented. So yeah, we acknowledge that. It's something we'll work to address going forward.
Thank you.
Identified in hand. Thank you, Jeff. I'm going to let you ask one more question, then I'm going to move on to the next bit. I think to the next item. Jeff, go on.
Sure. Reading through the notes, you refer to the London Road site having an EPC rating of B as opposed to most of the others A, and yet I thought the London Road site was your big showy site where everything is going to be gold plated almost, and yet we've got an EPC rating of B for that site.
That's to do with the change in the SAP ratings. So previously SAP only considered the energy efficiency of properties, but now it also considers the running costs. Because London Road is a full electric site with solar PVs, it's very super insulated as well, but it's still electric. And so with the new SAP 10 ratings, it means that it actually pushes things down from what would previously have been a plus down to a B because of how expensive electric is at the moment. So that's the issue here, unfortunately. And what we're finding now across the board with the new SAP ratings is that previous properties, which you'd consider a B, are now a C, and so on and so forth. But perversely, if you're using a really efficient boiler using gas, because gas is cheaper than electric currently, it's actually slightly better performing than if you have a full electrical site. So that's one of the kind of nuances with SAP 10, unfortunately.
Okay. Well, we'll wind that item up. Thank you very much. We will move on to item 7, which is the board update report to and this is going to be Lucy, you again.
Yeah. So this is the update report. So this is a report from the Housing Supervisory Board. Just a correction on this because it says Housing Supervisory update report to Cabinet. It's actually, it needs to go to full council. It went to Cabinet last time, but checking the terms of reference of the Housing Supervisory Board, it does actually specify it is to full council. And I think it's set out actually within the executive summary. When the Housing Supervisory Board was established, the power was to the Housing Supervisory Board to act as shareholder on behalf of the council were given by council, so the report needs to go back to full council. So just a correction on that, it will be this report, if approved, if the content approved by yourselves is destined to go to council in December as opposed to cabinet. So apologies for that. So this report sets out the broad areas and the themes which are to be covered in the update report to council, and it asks for approval. The work to develop and finalise the report is delegated to the Assistant Director of Homes and Communities in consultation with the Chair of the Housing Supervisory Board. So the executive summary just sets out the rationale for providing this update and sets out, where, in the terms of reference, that this is a requirement of the Housing Supervisory Board that it does report back to council on an annual basis. In terms of the areas and themes to be covered, they're set out in section 8. They broadly cover the areas and themes that were covered in the last update report in terms of that theme setting piece and what it is the Housing Supervisory Board does, the information that it receives at its quarterly meetings. It is going to go a little bit further in terms of the depth of the information provided this time. So it's going to include some of the financial information that CDL have been providing, in information around the sensitivity analysis around, bill costs, interest rates, and sales values that wasn't previously reported, but that's going to be reported to council, and also in terms of numbers of delivery against the approved business plan, and of course an overview of that approved business plan, which was approved by yourselves in March of this year. And then also we'll cover also the shareholder consent matters to which the Housing Supervisory Board has given approval this since the last report. So that will be appointment of directors and the approval of the business plan of the main key items which the Housing Supervisory Board have given approval to under its powers within the shareholder agreement. So that's, as I say, that's the broad structure that we're proposing to the report, but for the report, the detail will be added by Jane in consultation with the chair of the Housing Supervisory Board. So this is just to see whether or not there's any further information you would like covered in that report, and just to ask for approval, the outline consent and approval that work to develop and finalise is delegated to the Assistant Director of Homes and Communities in consultation with the Chair of the Housing Supervisory Board. So I'll take any questions or any comments on what it is that's to be included in the update report to Council.
Good. Ruth and Julia.
Thank you, Chair. Ruth Houghton. I note in the report that the Cornovi was established to deliver income to the council as well as meet a housing need. So I think in the report, I think that needs to be very clear as to how the income projected for the council, the impact that will have on the budget over the next 2 to 3 years, and on the proposed savings plans for the council.
Okay, Julian.
Thank you, Julian Dean. So yes, so the report suggests that yes, there'll be an outline of the expected return to the council, and then at point 8.5.6 provide a summary of CDL's ambitions to meet unmet housing need, which isn't quite the same thing as saying providing a report on how well we are actually meeting those unmet housing needs. So I just think that as that is what the business plan is all about, that needs to be explicitly reported on. The second thing is just, I think it would be nice to have, if you like, a bit of a co-benefit story, which is in part the sort of social value stuff, but perhaps also, in the unmet housing needs things, and it might have to be apocryphal, I realise that, or anecdotal rather, but are we delivering homes to key workers in particular market towns? Are we, those sorts of stories of whether there are some real co-benefits, whether we are meeting some of the aspirations that lie behind this, I think would also be really useful in terms of reporting on the achievements of the CDL. Thanks.
Right.
Yeah, no.
I saw you scribbling away,
yeah,
so.
Yeah. Sorry.
Are there any other thoughts about what should be included? Lucy, do you want to say anything?
Yeah,
or-
just on all of those points. Yeah, I don't see an issue with reporting on any of those. In terms of the homes to key workers, market towns, obviously that's something I'll lean on the colleagues in CDL to be able to provide in terms of their knowledge of who it is that the properties have been sold to. Perhaps ask that they do a little bit of analysis on those. Well, it'll be programme, won't it? For the developed schemes in terms of who those properties were sold to, because that's the completed scheme we've got now. So yeah.
Tony.
I think on the same sort of point as Julian raised it. I mean, we also, I think, need to highlight how we are providing accommodation for the elderly and the disabled, particularly with the high proportion of bungalows that we're building within our plan. So that would be another, I think, thing that we should be highlighting, as well as the key workers.
Okay, I can see scribbling going on, so that's been taken on board as well. Anybody other comments or aspirations for what should be shown in the report? Well, there are two recommendations on this. Obviously, they're not quite right because it says report to Cabinet. Obviously, that would be to full council. 3.1, 3.2, I'm not going to take a formal vote on it, but is everybody happy with those? Anybody not unhappy? Good. Okay. We'll move on then to item 8, which is the exclusion of the public and press. Do you want me to? I don't need to take a vote on it, do I? No. Good.